Hey, my name is Nate. I run Jesus People SF. And today I had kind of an insight about something that's general and specific to our time, which is that sense, as in like touch, feel, sight, perception, these are the devil's playthings. And what I don't mean by that is that you can't trust your senses at all. That's definitely not what I'm saying. Because if you can't trust your senses at all, you can't trust the Gospels. Because the whole point of the Gospels, meaning Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the epistles of the apostles, is that these people saw the Christ. And the great revelation of God is not simply some sermon, but the Christ as a human, incarnate, right? So the fact that we're to trust the gospel or the word of God at all is because people had sense, and they sensed and saw and touched the Christ and saw things at Sinai and all that. But what I am saying is that the senses are not 100% trustworthy. And because the scriptures confess that the world is in the hands of the evil one, it says the whole world is in the hands of the evil one. And in fact, it says that in the last days, there will be great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, the elect. And the whole point of the power and authority of the enemy is to make this kingdom the ultimate kingdom for angels and men that serve him anyway. And so the sense is his vehicle to do that. He wants to make you feel so excellent you think this is heaven on earth. And so the point of sense in the devil's mind is to lie and corrupt, to get you to not believe your faith. Now, God, on the other hand, is not against sense. Like, he made sense. Like, God is spirit, and he's in some sense just word, like the word. He could have made us just in some sense like verbal beings, right? That had no form, no touch, no taste, no feel. But God made us sensory beings, and he did that on purpose. And in fact, the New Testament testifies that sense is meant to help us to give thanks to God and to like consider God good, because when we sense something good that God approves of and we enjoy it, we can give thanks to him. We can enter into a kind of worship, whether it's like sex as a married person, whether it's a good meal, being able to go on a fun trip because you work a job and save up. All those things are good in them, like they're kind of neutral, but like when you do it for God and give thanks, like that's a good thing. So the enemy, though, his point of all sensory stuff is to get your eyes off of the thanksgiving. And in Romans 1, it says that people consider the creature, meaning this world, different aspects of this world, to be God instead of the creator. And all God was looking for generally from the nations when he gave them, good things like pleasures in this world, was to give thanks. And that's what Romans chapter 1 says. That basically God was just looking for thanks. And the enemy's kingdom, what they want to do in the ultimate sense, in the last things, the enemy's kingdom wants to pervert your sensory feelings on the spiritual level. And they want to make you think that the enemy's spiritual stuff is God. And they will do all kinds of things. They will use an equivalent of the small, still voice. They will try anything and everything to make you think that his copycat is the true God. And you see, that's why you have all kinds of mystics of all kinds of sects and religions across human history that have real spiritual experiences, and their whole claim behind their why you should follow them is it was real, and someone can testify, oh my gosh, it was so real. But like it being real in the sensory like aspect of it doesn't make it real in the sense of it aligns with the cosmic truth behind who's the real God of the universe and what is the real point of our lives and all of that. So I say all this because I think 99.99999% of people who are saying, oh yeah, Jesus told me, when you look at the fruit of their lives, it's not usually something that aligns too closely with someone like the Apostle Paul. And so I just want to encourage people, when you are considering sense, use it carefully, in the sense of like a little bit of cynicism. Don't trust your senses 100% of the time. Instead of relying on your senses, rely on faith first, and then once, as Hebrews says, you've tasted and you've developed your discernment over time. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, but when Hebrews is talking about discernment, it talks about tasting and developing a sense for what's right over time. I think Isaiah says the same thing about Jesus when he's a child. It says that he develops a sense for right and wrong, even as the Christ, and it uses an analogy of curds and wild honey, meaning like he developed a taste by God's providence early on in his childhood for what was right and what was wrong. So use your sense, enjoy the world, enjoy pleasure. I'm here at the grocery store. I'm gonna go have some food, and I'm going to enjoy that, and I'm not going to worry and sweat like, oh no, what if my senses are off, or what if I use this sense wrong? But when you get specifically a spiritual sense of something, test it according to the word. Even in the hyper spiritual days of the apostles, Paul the apostle tells Timothy not to go beyond what is written. All right, so when it was the days of Paul and Timothy, there were not many New Testament books written. Right, they didn't have a whole 26 epistles / gospel / book of Revelation copy of the New Testament. They had the Old Testament. They had even just some books in the Old Testament. And Paul adjured Timothy, who had a real prophetic gift. Paul even says that Timothy has a gift of prophecy. Even for Timothy, who has a gift of prophecy, Paul wants Timothy not to major on prophecy. He wants him to major on the Word of God. That's it. And if you could say it even this way, even the apostles, who had a direct line to the exactitude of what Christ expected for the church, if you read the Gospels and the epistles and Acts and Revelation, what you find are just tons and tons and tons of references to the Old Testament. Just tons. If you've ever seen the graph that shows the connection between the Old Testament and the New, and all the cross references that the New Testament makes to the Old, and even that the Old Testament makes to other Old Testament books, it's an amazing web. It's like a glorious crossing, and no spider could ever make a web as glorious as the apostles and some of the Old Testament authors quoting other books in the Old Testament. So major on the word and let that be your primary, and then use that to guide your use of sense, especially in the last days when sense could be just the ultimate deceiver. Anyway, hope that helps, and enjoy your life, enjoy the Word of God and your senses as God has approved.